Today we're talking about anchors. Does it keep you stable and safe, or are your anchors keeping you stuck? We're going to talk about the importance of anchors and when anchors are actually holding you back, and we'll get into it in this episode.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. Okay, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about anchors. The first thing that comes to mind for me is obviously a literal anchor, because we've spent a lot of time on sailboats, even living on a sailboat. And we created a whole framework for how you can progress or how you can manage a difficulty or pursue a goal, called the Navigator Framework. 7 steps: choose your island, chart your course, cast off, navigate out of the harbor, set your autopilot, trust your compass, and drop anchor. So just when I think about dropping anchor, when you drop anchor, you want to drop it into a sandy bed that gives your boat will have some swing, but your anchor is dug in nice and deep. And in our framework for goal setting, dropping anchor has a lot to do with acknowledging that you have arrived, acknowledging how far you've come, how much you've experienced, what you've learned, how you've grown, taking time to reflect and be grateful and enjoy right where you are. Dropping anchor for me has a lot to do with being present and resting in like that season of growth and just kind of soaking it in.
Can I talk a little bit about the actual mechanics of anchoring?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because I've had a number of people ask me, so how do anchors actually work? Because a lot of people in their mind think that you throw an anchor down to the bottom of the ocean floor and you want it to catch on a rock or something like that.
Like it's a grappling hook.
Yeah, it's a grappling hook, and if as long as that grappling hook stays in place, then your boat will stay in place, which is actually not true at all. An actual anchor, the anchors that we use function more like a plow. And so you lower it down to the ocean floor, the sea floor, and then you let out a lot of chain. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that you want to get an angle as you the anchor at some point is going to flip, and and as you pull on it, it's going to start digging into the ocean floor.
That's the plow.
That's why you want mud, sand, grass on the bottom. You do not want rocks. If you're anchoring near rocks, you're doing it wrong.
That's sketchy.
It's dangerous. It's bad. And so you want a soft, pliable bottom, and then you want to let out a lot of chain. We call it scope. And then as the boat pulls backwards on that's going to slowly dig the anchor into the floor. And the more you pull back, the deeper that's going to go. That's the idea. And so setting anchor is about one, just digging the plow into the ocean floor, and you want to let out a lot of chain, and it's actually the chain dragging across the ocean floor that does most of the work of holding your boat in place. You're going to swing and pivot on that anchor as the wind changes or as the tide changes directions, and that's okay. And the anchor is very heavy, and that dragging across the ocean floor does a lot of the work of holding your boat in place. And when you're ready to pull anchor.
Oh, I want to say a little bit more about the anchoring, because some of the other parts that's the basic of it on the boats that we take out and the one that we lived on. It's also really important once you have as much chain, or also called rode, as you need.
RODE.
Yeah, R-O-D, not R-H-O-D.
I think it's somebody fact check us.
Fact check.
I think it's RODE.
Spell check.
Yep.
But there's also the chain is coming across a pulley, and we put a little clip down so that once the chain is out, it isn't then continuing to pull on the motor that puts the chain up and down. And then the way we attach it, we like to spread it. We put a bridle on the chain so that we can spread the tension across the frame of the boat instead of just in one point. And I don't know what metaphors this might call to your mind, so I just wanted to share the entire anchoring system with you in case that's important. So the anchor is out, and it's not putting extra pressure on the motor that pulls it in and out, and it's like spread across the strong frame of the boat.
And if you want to see a visual of this, just go to our Instagram. We posted a reel a couple weeks ago of us actually raising anchor and dropping the plate that kind of locks the chain in, as opposed to keeping the weight on the motor that Emily's talking about, which is called a windlass. Mm-hmm. This is not meant to be a vocabulary podcast episode, but there are a lot of boaters always come up with a unique term for everything for some reason. And so
it's like the secret language.
Yeah. So anyway, and I guess just to jump into, then you say, okay, you know what? I am ready to go. I've been at rest for a while. I like what you're saying about boat or being at anchor is about arrival and being present. And it is really important after a crossing or a long day of sailing or whatever the distance and duration might be to come to rest. If you cannot bring the boat to rest, then you are always alert, awake, and you never sleep. And that's bad. So it's really important to bring the boat to rest and stop and collect yourself.
I'll say how I feel when we drop and set anchor. Literally, I feel a sense of relief as well as a sense of anticipation. The journey is fun. And when we come to rest, I think, oh, now I can hop off and swim around the water. Now I can paddleboard into shore. Now I can focus on maybe preparing a meal. We had one time when we came in to drop anchor and our windlass wasn't working. That motor that takes the chain up and down to set your anchor. And we were now in this little bay surrounded by boats, and we had every kid on alert with I want to call it a fender.
Bumper works.
Yeah, to keep us from running into any other boats. And we were trying to figure out how to get our anchor to go down because, we were on super high alert to be in a crowded area and not being able to come at rest or secure our spot or stabilize. Like there was so much anxiety for those few minutes until the windlass started up again. So I love that feeling of like, now we don't have to be on alert. We're not watching for other boats. We're not trying to see if something's going to cross our path. We don't have to worry about bumping into anything. We can now turn our attention to just enjoying the place where we are. So that's the feeling I get from setting anchor.
Yeah. And so I think I don't want to go too far ahead of ourselves with the metaphor, but part of raising anchor and getting ready to move again is you actually have to bring in all that chain. I'm going to call it baggage. You have to bring in all that baggage before you can actually pop the anchor. And what I tell everybody when we're out sailing, I said, we're going to move the boat. We're going to bring in the chain and we're going to move the boat towards where the anchor is. And when we're directly over the anchor, we're going to have a minimum amount of chain between the boat and the anchor. And that's when we're going to be able to pop the anchor. It's like popping open a soda can. You have to be at kind of like the vertical angle for that to work. Mm-hmm. And I think that when it comes to setting anchor and coming to rest, we have to lay out a little baggage. We have to sort of like spread out and let ourselves take up that space. Like when you get to a hotel, you unpack. And when you are ready to go again, you have to pack it up and then you walk out the door. Mm-hmm. And I think when that walking out the door is when you actually pull anchor and go somewhere else or do something new. But there's a little bit of packing and unpacking that's involved. Maybe we're getting too, too heady. Us?
You decide. It's up to you. Hopefully there's something useful for you here. But I think obviously it's something we do literally in sailing, but it's something that we do in our lives over and over again, where we may kind of lock into something that hey, we've achieved this goal. We're going to be here. We're maybe at this plateau for a while. We're enjoying this. Some area where it gives you stability. It gives you that safety. It gives you that sense of relief. And maybe it's because we just got an email recently from someone who said, hey, I just found my dream job. Like I'm doing my dream job right now. that's probably a place where they want to set anchor. They're probably like, you know what? I've been wanting this for a long time. I have now arrived here and I want to stay here and enjoy it. They may be at anchor for the rest of their life, their working life. They may not want to pull anchor anytime because they're getting so much out of that experience and they love it so much where they are right now. It might be, a commitment to any other kind of thing. For me, a real anchor in my life, an anchor that I think has that flexibility and allows me some swing but holds me in a steady place, is my faith. So that is an anchor that is serving me and has served me for 50 years, and I think I'm very happy with that. But there might be other things where you're like, okay, I tried this thing. Like, I really committed to running a marathon. I did the marathon. I enjoyed the satisfaction, the things that I learned about myself. I kind of sat in that for a while, and then I was like, marathons are not my thing anymore. And I moved on to other things. I don't know. Do you have any examples of things where you feel like you've kind of dropped anchor and then pulled up again?
Yeah. I mean, we lived in New York City for 20 plus years because I worked in the theater industry. And I very distinctly remember the moment when I was like, I think I'm ready to move on.
Mm.
And it was several years ago, probably 2008 or 9, I think. And a musical that I had written was getting shot for television. And it was we finished. It was a very grueling and demanding experience for me, not because of any real hardship. It's just, creative angst and, and, I thought it was going to be more this way and it's more that way. And, we just, the expectation is the thief of
Joy. I don't know.
Anyway, it turned
we
out.
just made that up. It's usually comparison, but
Comparison.
Yes,
there we go.
What you expect can
Yeah.
really bring you a lot of suffering if you don't get it.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a really grueling experience. I'm really glad I did it. But I remember just laying in bed that night when the final day of shooting was over. We hadn't even done post-production or editing. It wasn't close to being released. And I was kind of like, whew, I think I might be ready for a pivot. Like, I had been working on that show for so many years and so much effort had gone to bringing it to the point where it was. We'd done a production of it in New York. We'd done student productions of it in a couple of places. Anyway, the point being that once that was in the can, as they say,
It's captured,
in
preserved.
the film business, the film was in the can. I was like, I think I'm ready for a pivot. And that was a very concrete moment.
And that was a surprise.
Yeah.
It was a surprise to me.
And
was it a surprise to you, or it was like really natural? And
I
then
wasn't
like, huh? Yeah.
I wasn't planning it. That was for
Yeah.
sure. I think another one for me is, this is going way back. When I was young, before I had my driver's license, I was very anxious to be mobile and to be able to go where I wanted, when I wanted. And so I got into road cycling, and I would ride bikes all around where I grew up. And the roads were not good for it. They were skinny, very windy, narrow shoulders with forest on each side. And so I wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't like I was riding bike paths.
Mm-hmm.
I was in traffic, but I would do it because it really mattered to me and because I wanted to be able to get where I wanted to go. And then when I was 14, I went to Finland to spend time with my grandma, and my mom signed me up for this race that, not the Tour de Finlandia, or not the Tour de France, it was the Tour de Finlandia.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was 180 kilometers, which I think worked out to like 115 or 20 miles, something like that. And I did this race. It was the biggest thing I'd ever done. And when I was done with that, I was very satisfied. It was very exhausting. And when I came back from Finland, I would go out for a ride again. And I was kind of like, I feel like I've peaked. Like, I'm ready to move on to something else. And, I got my driver's license shortly thereafter. And so the reason for wanting to be out riding bikes was lessened.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't as fun because it was always like, I've already done something bigger and more exciting than this. And anyway, like, I feel like I was ready to move on, and I stopped cycling.
And you just knew.
And I just thought, like, it's not like the end of the world. I don't have to be a cyclist my whole life to be my authentic best self.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's making me think about there are kind of two different frames of thought on this idea of quitting. Like people say, like, nobody wants to feel like they are a quitter because it makes you sound like I gave up on something that was worth pursuing.
Mm.
That's what quitter sounds like, right? And then I've heard other people who take it and turn it around and say like, I quit something. Famously, Bob Goff has said like, I quit something every Thursday because I'm obviously bringing things into my life and I can't keep all of them going at once. So I'm like exploring, deciding, and constantly sorting and revising what is good for my life right now. And um, so I like using this term about dropping anchor, just that we're on this journey through life, and in some places we're going to stop and set anchor. Maybe it's because it's somewhere we want to be. Maybe it's because we need to rest. Maybe it's for we need to our boat needs some special attention. Like for any number of reasons, you might say, you know what, this is going to be a season of staying put so we can turn our attention to other things.
Another example that for me, maybe it's obvious, which didn't pop to mind, is every Sunday I feel
Mm.
like I drop anchor. I set aside my work for the week. I go to church. I rest. I try to take time to reflect, and I try not, I don't do house projects. I I'm not responding to work emails or texts, and I just take a break from all that, and it's really refreshing. And so, for me, I call it the Sabbath. If other people do it, you can just call it being at anchor. But I think just taking a rest from something that is demanding allows you to show back up again, renewed and rejuvenated. And I think that that's good for everybody. Everybody wins with that.
I love that, especially that you're talking about being renewed and rejuvenated, and um, that in every case, that is what coming to anchor, dropping anchor should be. And so, um, I think I want to pivot now from this story of this woman who's like, "Hey, I found my dream job. I'm just going to be at that anchor for a while." To sometimes when being at anchor is actually us being stuck, and it's really time to pull up all the chain, to get over that anchor, to pull it up, to lift your sails and head out again. So maybe you could tell the story you were just telling me about someone who wrote you an email about being at anchor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, we have Facebook stuff out there, and some guy sent me a message, and he's retired. And he's like, I can't really afford to go on one of your trips, but I lived on a boat for 20 plus years, and it was or 25 years, I think. And he said it was just the best thing. And he bought it in the Northeast and sailed it down to Florida. And basically, he lived in the Florida Keys at anchor for many years, maybe a decade or two.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't remember the message that precisely. But just because you're on a boat doesn't mean you're actually sailing. You can be on a boat and just literally live at anchor. You tie up in a marina, and that boat is, you come and go from that spot, and you could have a car in the parking lot. And when you unpack your groceries, you just bring them down and put them in your boat, and that's where you sleep. And you're all connected to power and water and internet and everything else and heating, and you don't actually move the boat. You just live at the dock, or you live at anchor.
It's like that movie You've Got Mail where the Tom Hanks character and his dad like live on a boat in the 79th Street boat basin, but they're just like
Yes.
in New York City. But I know when we were living on a boat, people definitely had the impression that all day, every day, our boat was moving. And that was certainly not the case and would have been so exhausting because when would you sleep? Um, but you'll know, like, I feel like you've given some good examples of when you're moving into that stuck territory where, like, hey, we've been at anchor long enough here that I've reflected, I've been grateful, I've rested, I've repaired my boat, I've explored this territory, and I'm no longer feeling like this is life giving or that I have something to contribute here, right? Like for whatever reason, you feel like I've explored this to the extent that I'm interested in exploring it. And now it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the example that I'm thinking of was yesterday. We were at church and somebody got up and was kind of sharing their thoughts and, lived in our neighborhood where we are for a couple of decades, raised their kids here, and decided it was time for a new chapter as
Yeah.
they become empty nesters. And that new chapter means they're moving
Like,
one town over.
yeah. It's gonna.
And so,
It'll feel completely different.
new house, new street, new, who knows what. I don't know
New
if anything.
community.
I don't know if anything changes for work, but yeah, picking up anchor doesn't mean you have to go far. You can.
Yeah.
You can go to the other side of the planet. You can go around the planet. You can
go to another planet.
You could go to outer space. That's one of my goals. But yeah, but at a certain point, sometimes it does happen in the rhythm of your life where you say, all of our kids have moved out, and so now I'm at a new point. It's time for me to pull anchor and do something new. And so I just think it's one of those things that can take various shapes and form.
Yeah, I think maybe if I ask a couple of questions, you can self-assess. If anything comes up for you, then you'll know. So one question might be, what are the anchors that are giving you stability and peace right now? What are the anchors that are giving you life? And it might be your location, your home, your job, your friends, a community you're involved with, or a project you're working on. And then here's another question is, where might you be clinging to stability because it feels safe, even though it's keeping you from moving forward? Mm-hmm. If something comes up for you there, then, that's from you. Do you feel like there have been any times when we maybe stayed anchored too long?
Are you looking at me?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I remember we were on the move quite a bit. We were for about 5 years, we were moving 70 to 80% of the time, traveling a lot. And it was slow travel, so I had a higher stamina for it than I do for fast travel. But then when COVID happened, there was a season of just all the anchors dropped, right? Every child came home. We were home. Everything slowed down, and we were just present in the moment with really no idea what the future was going to look like. Everybody experienced that same thing.
And there was nowhere to go.
At first, it was very centering, right? This crisis emerged, and we were like, what's most important? And that was our family all gathering. And then as it was protracted, I think we started to feel it, and we ended up maybe not even realizing it, but pulling anchor pretty suddenly. We were like, oh, we're going to do this cross-country trip. Our kids had left their winter clothes on the other side of the country, and here they'd now been home for a full year. And so let's go get it. And when we went to get it, I think we ended up just moving to California on our vacation.
Let's keep going.
And we stayed for 11 months. So I think we didn't realize maybe until we pulled anchor that we had maybe been steady for too long. And I can think, in our case, more of times when we've pulled anchor before I was ready. Time to go. Wait, I didn't finish.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
The ratios here, because oftentimes, at least when people talk to us, they say, "Oh, you're really adventurous, or you're gutsy, and you're willing to just sort of chuck it all and go do a thing." Mm-hmm. And we don't. Maybe we have some blind spots, but we don't really see ourselves that way. I think we see ourselves as very deliberate and gradual, and at a certain point,
and curious,
we'll pull up that chain slowly, over time, and that's invisible because it's all under the surface of the water. Mm-hmm. And then one day you pop the anchor and off you go. Yeah. But a lot of the pulling into the chain is not seen by everybody. They only see you pulling anchor and heading out.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that we're learning is that it's really hard if you have no stability anywhere in your life, in any area, all at the same time. And you're laughing. Because,
we haven't gone like fully without any stability because we do have a really anchored faith and a strong relationship with each other, but we've like pulled up everything else.
yeah. And sometimes if you do everything all at once, that can be really disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be the right way to go. Maybe it is. But one thing that we've learned is that it's possible to kind of manage it a little bit. And you can say, I don't want to pull anchor in my professional or income area. I want to keep a steady income, and I'm going to pull anchor in this area and do something new.
Mm-hmm.
It might be like, I'm gonna try out for a sports team, even though I'm in my 40s, or it could be, let's just say, joining a band per se. What? Sorry.
Somebody
here somebody just on this podcast just did that.
And it is the one who can play instruments.
But we didn't sell the house and go on tour.
Yeah.
We just joined a band. I just joined a band. And you might say, well, I want to start a business, but I'm not going to walk away from my job until just yet. I'm going to build my business as a side hustle, and then there will be a time when I might switch over and make that full time, and I scale back my job, or I quit my job. But you may not want to just quit your job and go all in on something that's not up sure and running yet. Anyway, and so you can say, well, and I've seen people that we've taken out sailing, where a lot has come to a head. They are newly divorced. They just, because of the divorce, they sold the house, so they're moving. They're dating for the first time,
or maybe they're a widow,
or and then so that's like a new physical environment, a new relationship environment, a new financial situation. And that is like, that's a lot.
This might be a great place to bring in our friend Whitney's book, Smart Growth. Whitney Johnson wrote this book called Smart Growth. And you were the one who said you wanted to talk about kind of that launch path and that S curve. And I think it applies to what you're talking about right now.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Smart Growth.
Smart Growth. Okay. And yeah, really, she's just saying, be selective. Actually, before I talk about Whitney, I want to talk about Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Oh, okay. We'll come back to Whitney.
Whitney, we love you. We'll be back. Hang tight. So the book is Flow. I don't know that I've actually ever read the book. I've read excerpts of it. I've heard him speak.
Just ask ChatGPT to give you the main takeaways.
But the idea is that we all need challenges in our lives. We need something that's going to help us grow. And we want it to be challenging, but not too challenging, but also not too unchallenging. We don't, if it's, and here's how I would describe it. If we're taking on something and it's not very challenging, it's actually just a task. It's something we already know how to do. It's something that we're fully confident we can do. We just have to get it done and cross it off our list. If we don't know quite how we're going to do it, that's when we get to this sweet spot of being engaged, but curious and maybe a little bit nervous. But then if we get too far into like, oh man, I've bitten off more than I can chew, and I'm just choking and drowning, and I'm having a miserable experience. I don't want to keep going because I'm just scared I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. That's too much. Mm-hmm. And so that's just scary. And so how do we find this sweet spot between boring and scary? That's what we want to find. And I feel like I want to say 4%.
4%. Yeah, that's what I've seen everywhere.
For me, that feels a little low, and maybe that's just me personally, but
yeah, you can dial it up depending on your challenge tolerance.
But yeah, if you're doing something and if you take up the difficulty by 4% at a time, then that's like considered, based on the research, kind of the sweet spot. And so yeah, I don't want to try and give examples because that could apply to like practically everything.
And so it'd be really nice if we actually had control over how challenging things were that come into our lives. And sometimes the challenges are way bigger than that. And what Whitney talks about in the S curve is, the shape of an S. It starts low on the bottom, then it kind of goes up, and then it plateaus out at the top. And when you're out at the bottom at the launch phase, um, just new to this information, new to the situation, you're learning so much. You're actually learning at the highest rate during that beginning period. I see this in our granddaughter right now. She's like wiring her brain and her body together to understand how everything works. And I can almost see those little neurons wiring as she's trying to get her fist to go to a certain place. Anyway, it looks like very little is happening, but it's like the biggest growth spurt for her brain in her life. That's what the launch seasons are like. It looks like you're making very little progress, but you're actually learning at the highest rate because everything is new. And then you progress along, you start to get the hang of it. You start to feel like you know what you're doing. And it's fun, it's challenging, but it's exciting because you know enough to move forward. And then you peak out, you get to the top, and you're like, I get it. I've mastered this. This isn't challenging for me anymore. I could do this in my sleep. I remember we were talking to a friend of ours who's written many high selling business books, and he was like giving us a little counsel and advice. And then he was like, well, I got to go hop on a podcast now. Or he was doing an interview on a radio show or something. And I was like, what? Like, you're just going to hang up with us and get on with them? Like, I would need to like pick my wardrobe or, look at my talking points or just like settle myself or whatever. And I was kind of blown away that he was just going to hop from one thing to the next. But I haven't been interviewed as many times as him, but I have been interviewed to the extent that I could pretty much do the same thing.
Now,
now I could be like, yes, I can hop on, I can talk, I can be articulate on these things, I can share something that's useful with other people. It's fun on our podcast because we explore lots of different topics, but usually when people want to invite us on, they want to hear similar stories and discuss similar themes that I'm, very ready to speak on at a moment's notice, and it doesn't cause me any alarm or preparation needed. All the preparation is under my belt. So that's at the top of the S curve, kind of the mastery phase. And at that point, you can start to get a little bored. You can feel like you're not challenged because as human beings, it is our nature and what Whitney calls our default mode to want to grow, to be learning, to be progressing in some way. So that's kind of the S curve. And that is really related to knowing when you want to drop anchor and when you want to be pulling anchor. Because when you've hit that mastery phase, and then it can feel like it's time for me to move on to something else so that I can be progressing.
And I think that willingness and ability to make those leaps is a sign of real wisdom, because it's tempting to just stay where we are, where it's comfortable. And I'm not advocating that we just need to be always pulling up trees by their roots to see if they're growing. You need to let things have their time and their space. And it's not always about just change for change's sake. But knowing that there will come moments in your life when it's time to just say, this is the end of a chapter and I can stay here, but I won't be growing here. And if I want to keep growing, I have to move on, change it up, make a shift, however you want to describe it. Mm-hmm. And that is a real mark of bravery and wisdom to do it. Mm-hmm. One, just to identify it, and then to have the courage to actually make the move. And I think that also, ironically, is leads to the happiest life. It leads to the greatest fulfillment. And yes, we need to pick and choose. It doesn't mean, oh, hey, I'm going to blow up my life and sell my house and leave my family and quit my job. It doesn't have to be that. It can be like,
that doesn't usually lead to a happier, more
you
fulfilling
can
life.
you can go with the people that you care about. You don't have to move geographically. You don't have to quit your job. But as long as we can identify in various areas of our lives when it's time to make a pivot and then do it, that is going to result, in my experience and in my opinion, a really satisfying, fulfilling life.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you were saying a little earlier about also having the wisdom to know in which areas of your life to keep the anchors and which to pull. And it's kind of like energy management, the same way you might budget your money and say, something needs to change. I'm ready for some growth. And I'm going to choose which area I'm going to be pulling anchor, and the other areas are going to stay stable so that I don't get overwhelmed. And I would say, for example, when you, like in our case, what we've experienced when we started this business, I think it was kind of a necessity thing because other things were happening, and we're like, we need to start a business. But if you choose like, oh, I'm going to start a new business, then you have to know that change element is going to create change and pulling up anchors in a lot of areas. Where if you were like, oh, I want to join a band, everything else in your life could be stable, and you could pour all of your risk tolerance and your uncertainty and this creative energy and challenge into that one area where everything else could be steady. So it's just something that you can decide, you can recognize. Whitney talks about if you're making too many changes at once, that can be overwhelming. And so you have to know your own tolerance, test it out, see if it's too much or too little, and be like, you know what, I do need a little stability back in here so that I can pour my creative energy into this thing that really matters.
Well, I think just to use ourselves as maybe not the best example, I'll say when we moved here to Utah, it was, we had sort of moved spontaneously from New York to San Diego, and maybe not as spontaneously, but
we planned it for several months.
But we moved from San Diego to Utah, and so we were moving home, our geographical home. We bought a fixer-upper historical home, so we're renovating the house. We're starting a new business.
It's also a rental.
Yeah, and we became property owners as well, landlords, and in part. And two of our daughters were getting married, and so it was a time of tremendous upheaval in many areas, and I think it was too much.
It was too much for us.
I mean, how to regulate it and sort of dial it back, I'm not sure, but I can say that was a time when we kind of the scale had tipped too far on the new side, and it would have been really great to have a few things that were just solid and under our feet, rather than having to feel like we were just grasping in every area of our lives. And I don't feel like we're there anymore, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I remember at that time we also got some big volunteer opportunities at church. That was kind of like, that was it. Felt like we were at our max, and then it was like, hey, we'd like to ask you to help with this. And it was like, okay, that just like pulled the complete rug out from under us. And it was good for us to be able to say, we have too many new things going on in our life. That is why it's so hard, and just normalizing it, kind of how we managed it.
So anyway, we're talking about this not because we're awesome at it, but because it's a principle that we're learning and we're trying to implement in our own lives. And hopefully in talking about it, you can have a way to articulate it and recognize it and hopefully do better in your own life. Better than us.
And I think because it never goes away. That's another reason we're always talking about it, because things are always changing. And so we're always deciding where to drop anchor and where to pull anchor. And we're also always asking, what could go right?
Hey guys, before we wrap up, I just want to give you the sailing update. This is Erik Orton, and the update is 2025 is sold out. One caveat: We actually got a bigger boat than we expected for our November BVI trip. So November 10th through the 15th, we have one additional spot for one female solo traveler. November 10th through the 15th, 2025, British Virgin Islands. If you want to join us, we've got one spot for a lady. Otherwise, the rest of the year is sold out. In a couple of weeks, we are going to announce our whole 2026 lineup. And I'm going to save it for then when we give you all the details. But if you do want to go in January, February, those trips are, even though we haven't announced it yet, they're actually mostly full. So hop on a call with us if you want to see about going on those trips. And the one thing that I'm going to leak out is that I am super excited that we are adding a trip to Norway. I've never sailed there. We're going to team up with a local skipper and he's going to show us around, but we are going to go to Norway next year. And so we're excited to tell you more about that and the whole lineup for the year. But if you want a sneak peek, jump on a call with us. We can talk you through all the options and we'll release the rest of the schedule to everybody else later here in a few weeks. That's the sailing update. Hope to sail with you someday. If someone you knew we wanted to come up was thinking about coming out, what would you say or what advice would you give them?
Definitely. Like I said, you get to see places that you wouldn't normally see. You can't fly to these islands, and it's just a chance to see the world in a different way. You took good care of us. I didn't feel scared or worried at all.